Okay, folks, this week we're going to look into the clothing of a Kohen. Like I said last week, I'm not so good at hardcore detail or floating on mystical bubbles. For me to understand, I need to keep everything real simple. So let's just jump in and see if we can do just that. To review, the Mishkan's design is a literal representation of God dwelling within the people. It captures our mutual values, investments, and covenants. It is a nexus of the finite and the infinite. But despite the architecture, we can't just walk up to the Mishkan and say, "Dude, I can see forever from here." It doesn't just sit there. No, the Mishkan is a happening place, and it is the Kohanim who make it happen. And for this job, they can't just show up in their civvies. Back in my day, young management consultants would always wear a suit. It not only honored the firm and the client, it made the kid in the suit feel like he fit the role. Likewise, Moshe is told to make clothes for honor and for glorification. But the text doesn't say whose honor and glorification. The reason is because the clothes honor God and the people, while making the Kohen himself feel like he fits the role. I'm going to digress for a bit. We need to talk materials. We're not talking fine Italian leather, though. The Torah has some other things in mind. First, we've got gold. As we've discussed before, it represents the divine. Done. Then we've got Techelet, or sky blue. Up until the 1960s, when we stuck some monkeys and dogs into orbit, there was nothing dead in the sky. It was a place without loss. So blue represents purity from loss or death. In Bamidbar, we have the various colors used to cover things. Blue can cover everything but the ashes and tools of the offerings. Why not those things? Because it represents purity from loss. Ashes don't. Next is purple. In Bamidbar, purple covers the ashes of the offerings. As was common in the ancient world, this color represents honor. How about scarlet, or to'alat shani? When the people collected the manna, some saved it, worried there wouldn't be more. The tola'at, or worms, ate their manna. It taught them trust in God, but it also reinforced God's ongoing investment in the people. This concept of trust and investment is seen in the cycles of Shabbat, Shemitah, and Yovel. Shani implies repetition, or a cycle. Tola'at Shani, or scarlet, represents this cycle of trust and investment. This is why, in Bamidbar, it covers the bread and utensils of the divine table, the signs of God's investment in us. Finally, we have sheish, or linen. Linen is a material which humans grow and then process. The word sheish means 6, recalling the 6 days of work. As far as fabrics go, this is the closest representation of our human effort. Sheish mashzar, or fine woven linen, just reinforces the human hand in the material. So, gold is divinity, blue is purity, purple is honor, scarlet is the cycle of trust and investment, and linen is human industry. Got it? You better. It will be on the test. Okay, back to the clothes. So, our young management consultant is a very bendy fellow. He does what others ask. Hashem asks him to go to Moshe, he goes. The people ask him to make a calf, he makes it. He's called a pursuer of peace for precisely this reason. He is so eager not to fight that he sometimes fails to stand up. So long as the wiggliness is guided, this is an excellent attribute to Kohen. Just like a management consultant, a Kohen doesn't represent himself. His own ego is supposed to be minimized. Of course, this is precisely why I don't think I'd make a very good Kohen or management consultant. The Kohen's ephod, though, helps with this whole ego minimization thing. The ephod has straps that go up on the shoulders where the names of the tribes are inscribed on stones and embraced by gold. As the Kohen walks, he's carrying the names of the people, embraced by God, on his shoulders. Why? The text says it is a reminder. The ephod reminds the Kohen that he's carrying the relationship between the people and God on his shoulders. The ephod doesn't only have straps, it wraps around the Kohen, constraining him. According to most opinions, the ephod wraps around the legs. The legs represent will, which is why angels are traditionally imagined as having no legs. Yaakov, the most willful of forefathers, only draws up his legs right before he dies. So, not only does the Kohen carry the relationship, but he is constrained by it. Our management consultant is really feeling the part. Next, we have the breastplate of law. It has the Jewish tribes inscribed on stones. Stones imply something unchanging and permanent. The stones are connected by materials of purity, honor, trust, industry, and divinity. But they too are embraced by God's gold. The text says the breastplate is there so the high priest can bring the names of the children of Israel into the place of holiness continually. He brings the Jewish people, embraced by God, into timelessness. The breastplate comes with 2 other items, the Urim and the Tumim. They roughly translate as the enlightened and the perfect. They represent the law itself, which is also carried into timelessness by Aaron. That consulting firm is looking pretty sharp. How about the robe? Well, its pure blue color lets us know that it represents God. Only He is free of loss. The prohibition on tearing a hole for the neckline reinforces this idea of losslessness. The robe's hemline has pomegranates. Fruit in Torah are always gifts of God. The pomegranates are blue, purple, and scarlet, capturing his gifts of purity, honor, and investment. Note, there is no linen. This garment represents God, not humanity. Finally, it has gold bells. Hearing is our way of connecting to God. A walking man could never control the sound of gold bells on his hem, but Hashem can. In this way, the robe represents and even speaks for God. All of this wraps the Kohen with divinity, enabling him to enter the place of timelessness. He represents God, and with threads like these, the client has got to feel like he's the king of the world. The headband of gold and blue brings it all together. It is pure and divine, and it marks the Kohen as holy to Hashem. Holiness is the investment of the creative and the time-bound in the timeless. With its final touch, the Kohen becomes the embodiment of that interface, crossing both worlds and being restrained by them. So we've got three themes. The ephod restrains the Kohen's own will, the breastplate brings the Jewish people to the infinite, and the blue robe brings the infinite into our world. All three parties are honored and glorified. When the garments are put on, they all wrapped around him ephod style. They all constrain the Kohen for his mission. Of course, the Kohen Gadol isn't the only Kohen. The regular priests have a shadow of his garments. There is a tunic of highly patterned linen representing human creativity. There is a turban that covers the hair and thus minimizes the ego of the individual. And there is the sash. It is made of many colors, representing the divine gifts of purity, honor, and the cycle of trust. The high priest wears these same garments as a sort of base layer of symbolism. Finally, there is a poor quality linen undergarment. It doesn't symbolize anything, but serves to hide the biological wastefulness of the Kohen himself. It brings him closer to the lossless reality of the divine. So we've got the clothes, and you might think that the clothes make the man, but they aren't enough. Our management consultant actually has to do the work. So, to finish the picture, we need a few offerings. First, there's a bull. Bulls represent nations. In this case, we offer the blood, inner fats, and purifying organs of the bull. These represent the potential, endurance, and purity of the Jewish people. In other words, the timeless Jewish people are connected to God. Next, rams are offered. With Isaac's sacrifice, the ram is a substitute, which also represents fear of God and the subservience of our will to him. The ram serves the same purposes here. The first ram represents the Kohanim. They lay their hands on it, putting themselves into it, and then they sacrifice it, dedicating themselves to God, like Yitzchak himself. The Kohanim dip the blood of the second ram with their right toe, thumbs, and ears. They thus signal that the prime of their will from the feet or legs, action from the thumbs, and influence from the ears will be dedicated to God. They constrain themselves. By waving unleavened and oiled bread, representations of human labor and purification before Hashem, the Kohen shows that they are constrained because they represent the people. The altar itself is then sanctified through sin offerings. Through sin offerings, even our failings can be made into positives. We thus prepare our imperfect reality for the presence of God. Finally, God himself is brought into the picture through the continual and thus timeless offerings. Sheep enable their keepers, who are often nomads, great freedom. By making them part of this offering, we can see that the timelessness of the divine is brought in, despite the flexibility of the world is entering. Put this all together, and you've got a Kohen. To remember the whole thing, just keep in mind three themes. The Kohen's will is constrained, the Kohen brings the people into God's world, and the Kohen brings God into ours. Everything follows from there.